And action! Welcome to another edition of Pat and Mike's Movie Club.
Sorry,
are you eating something?
Yeah, I just had some popcorn. Do you want some?
You know what? I saw you, like, as I was speaking, like, start pretending to eat something.
No, what do you
but
mean?
then
I
I
had it for
actually
real.
wasn't. Then I actually wasn't sure if you had eaten something or not. And then during me asking, "Are you eating something?" It computed in my mind, I know exactly what Pat's about to do, and I liked it. I love that, man.
Nah, no worries. See, this is the value you don't get from other podcasts. A lot of podcasts, they like to kind of keep the illusion. We pull the curtain back.
It's what we like to do here on Pat and Mike's Movie Club. You know what else I really like to do? Not just in Pat and Mike's Movie Club, but in Mike and Mike's Life Club.
What would that be?
Spend money unnecessarily and quickly on stuff I don't need and isn't worth it.
But not in 30 days.
No, just in any days.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And
We've all
that's
done that.
kind of a coincidence I bring that up, Pat, because this month's movie on Movie Club is a little movie called Brewster's Millions from 1985.
Oh, wow.
Shall we get into this bad boy?
You know what? Let's cash this in.
Oh, I love it.
Money. Everyone wants it. Until now, Monty Brewster didn't have it.
They tell me you're my only living relative.
But he just made money the old-fashioned way.
You have 30 days in which to spend $30 million.
He inherited it.
If you can do it, you get 300 million. But if you fail, you don't get diddly. Why can't I tell my friends? Because I don't want anybody helping me out. What's wrong? Spike, what's wrong? 30 million.
All right, Pat, Brewster's Millions first came out in 1985, directed by a guy named Walter Hill. The slogan for the film is, "You don't have to be crazy to blow $30 million in 30 days, but it helps." And the movie runtime is 97 minutes. Here's a short description. Brewster, an aging minor league baseball player, stands to inherit $300 million if he
Cha-ching.
can successfully spend $30 million in 30 days without anything to show for it and without telling anyone what he's up to. A task that's a lot harder than it sounds. It is great to be back in the Mikey cinema to be discussing this bad boy. You actually chose this movie. Do you want to give us any background on sort of why you went with this one?
Yeah, so two reasons. Number one, I've wanted to watch a lot more movies with Richard Pryor. Obviously, if you're unfamiliar, Richard Pryor being one of the most well-renowned comedians of the late 20th century, famous for movies such as Hear No Evil, See No Evil, which is the only Richard Pryor movie I have seen. So I wanted to expand that palette, and B, if you're under 25, you might relate to this. I discovered this movie through one of those like bullshit TikTok like condensed like cuts of the movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, where
I've
it's-
never seen those. Does TikTok do that?
Yeah, so there's this
Like
popular,
movie in a minute kind of vibes.
kind of. So there's this popular subgenre of like they'll play this specific like tense track, and there'll be a voiceover saying, so for example, we're doing Brewster's.
Yes, I remember these.
Yeah, the man inherited all this money. The man had to do this, and then he went and da 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 da.
I
And
never.
so-
Those TikToks are so weird because like it's like always this voice, and they always like. It's like someone from a different country is like from a different language is writing about it because it's like three people go to the snow. This, then this, and they're just explaining the whole movie, and you're
Yeah.
just like you kind of get sucked into it.
Like no, literally, and probably the worst way to consume a movie.
Yeah, is seeing random clips of the movie while someone explains vaguely what's going on.
Which is not how I watched this movie. I just want to
That's
clarify.
good. Yeah. But you originally saw this on that kind of format?
I did. I saw a clip in one of those, one of those formats.
Interesting.
And so it's always been, Brewster's Millions has been stuck in the back of my head for some time. And I thought, you know what? Probably the best time to get it out.
Yeah, okay. I have, I think, heard of this movie once before.
Really?
And I guess it kind of brings me into my first sort of point. I think I heard of this movie, just a side story. I remember Hamish Blake telling me about this movie.
Really?
And he said, "Have you seen that movie Brewster's Millions?" And I said, "No, I haven't. What's it about?" And he explained it. And then I said, and I don't know if you have seen this other movie, I said to him, Oh, so it's kind of like that kids movie Blank Check. Have you seen Blank Check or heard of it?
I have heard of it. I've always wanted to see it. You know, yeah, that's like the kid movie equivalent of it.
Yeah, so Blank Check, I really wanted to bring it up. I mean, I haven't, like, I'm sure it existed because I saw it at some point. But essentially
I think it was a Disney movie or something.
Yeah, it was like a straight to TV. Look, 1994. Blank Check. There it is. There.
Yeah, there you go. It's got a poster and everything. It has to be real.
The idea of the movie, from what I remember, and as a kid I loved it, but I just saw that friend of the show, Dave Lee Down Under on Letterboxd, gave it 1 star. So I assume it doesn't hold up well. But the premise of that movie is that I think the kid gets hit by some billionaire by a car and falls over, and the billionaire's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I have to go, but like, just take this check. I'm really sorry." Writes him a check, forgets to write a number of the value of the check. So then the kid photoshops it for like, you know, whatever it was, like $10 million, and then cashes the check and then has all this money. Kind of similar-ish to this movie, but that's the first thing it reminded me of.
So that like that genre of like rich movies, like Blank Check and Richie Rich. And
Richie Rich definitely came to mind as well. Richie Rich is another, like, because I think in this movie club eventually we'll go on and sort of talk about...
We will talk about the movie, don't worry.
We'll talk about like the theme of like money and like the concept of like unlimited money, like more sort of philosophically. But like, yeah, Richie Rich and Blank Check definitely like feed into that, because I think the message of Blank Check from memory was that money can't buy you everything, even because I think even though he has all this money, he can't get his mum to be happy with him or something like that. That's my vague remember. So what are your initial thoughts of Brewster's Millions?
I gotta say, I wasn't expecting this to be like a blowout, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever seen kind of movie. But I gotta say, like, as someone who hasn't been, you know, going back and rewatching a lot of old movies, this was a great change of pace, and I really, really enjoyed this one. In fact, I'm honestly going to go as far as to say I think this is my favorite movie so far.
Really?
Dead set.
Of the movie club?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, I found it, like, okay. I didn't love it,
I expected
but I didn't hate it. Like, there's a weird thing with movies from the 80s and before. Maybe it's because I wasn't born in that decade. Like, they just have a weird feeling to them. Like, it's like when you watch a movie, I don't know, at uni we had to watch all these movies from like the 50s and shit where they like
12 Angry Men.
Yeah, where they were like still figuring out what movies were. So a lot of them are basically just plays that are being filmed.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Yeah, and then by the 80s I feel like they're like nearly there to what modern movies are, but they're not quite. And you know, even like when text comes up on the screen, it's just like there's no like graphics. It's literally just white text like thrown up on the screen and stuff like that, and has like cheesy 80s music as well.
Yeah, it's more cookie cutter compared to today.
Yeah, and I think like, I mean, the premise of the film, as we know, like he's this baseball player, and that already sometimes takes me out of a movie because baseball for Aussies is so foreign. Like, what I was going to ask you about that. Like, what do you think of that?
Yeah, so like, because what are the big baseball movies out there? The Sandlot, and like, that's it.
Benchwarmers, maybe?
Oh, yeah, true.
And like maybe... like, baseball pops up in a lot of American movies, but...
It does, but like, it's not one of the most like defining like sports movies out there compared to like boxing or even American football.
Well, that's it. Like, if they made like a soccer movie, that could have worldwide potential because soccer's a worldwide sport. Baseball,
100%.
like, obviously it's not just in America, but like baseball in Australia it obviously exists and people
not in
play
the same light.
nowhere near. Yeah.
I used to play softball in high school.
That sucks.
It's basically the same, but the ball's literally soft.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like whenever I see baseball in a movie, I just don't get it. It automatically takes me out from the start.
It just, man, like whenever I see baseball in media, I'd immediately think of that really bad Simpsons episode. I think it was like season 19, season 20, where like Bart plays baseball and then Marge forces the crowd to watch the game until Bart finally gets like a home run or something. Do you remember that one?
No, I don't think I've seen that one.
Yeah, don't.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, you're not selling it.
No, it's pretty bad. But yeah, no, I quite enjoyed this one. Obviously, you know, the two highlights of this movie, particular being, you know, the the center star Richard Pryor, and John Candy, who I thought gave a really good performance.
John Candy delivers in every performance he's in. Have you seen this movie called Planes, Trains, and Automobiles with Steve Martin and John Candy?
I haven't. The closest I've seen to that movie is like a reference to the mess around scene in one of the Family Guy Star Wars movies.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, that movie is, again, it's an 80s movie, but it's really funny. And John Candy plays like the doofus to Steve Martin's straight man. And they play it so well, especially because Steve Martin is such a good comedic actor to kind of just like give Candy that whole glory of being the funny guy for that movie is just like so good. But yeah, it's around Thanksgiving, so it could be kind of a Christmassy sort of movie. And that's my favorite John Candy performance, but he does deliver here.
Yes. Well, I mean, probably that, and then also the Home Alone cameo probably equal in performance.
Yeah.
I guess essentially the movie starts, as you said, he's a minor league baseball player.
Yeah.
They're out in New Jersey in like, a rinky-dink field. You know, they even, they hone that point in by showing that they have to stop the game midway through to let a train come through because there's a there's train tracks in the middle of the field. Could you imagine it like at the MCG, like,
oh,
Carl
guys,
Nessenden.
just stop. We got the train coming through.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, that'd be insane.
But I guess that was probably to just hone in that they live in a shithole.
Yeah.
I suppose.
They're complaining a lot about like the minor league and everything. Like he wants to be major league, but he's basically way too late in his career to
100%. Because by the end of it, he ends up getting dropped from the team, and they essentially they just say, "Oh, look, you got to play for 15 years. That's pretty good for most minor league players."
Yeah, yeah.
And essentially, he's just left in the dumps, and then out of nowhere comes this saving grace, and he's met by this man who takes him to a firm.
And it is revealed that like he's the last living relative of his great uncle or something.
Yes,
and like
a loose relative that he didn't even know existed.
Who is white, and obviously Richard Pryor's black. Yeah. And leaves him, he basically says, he leaves him $30 million and he has to spend it in 30 days. And if he does successfully, he gets $300 million inheritance, but he can't own any assets.
No. So within 30 days, he has to blow all the money. He can't just use it all on one thing, He has to, he can only donate 5% to charity.
Yeah. This is why, for me, like this movie doesn't actually work that well, because there's too many just arbitrary rules of how he can spend the money. Like, because why can't he just be like, oh, hey, can I pay you $30 million to do this job for me? Like, can't he just find a really expensive hooker and like pay her heaps of money for the service? But it's like, no, you can't give it away. But it's like, but what's the difference between giving someone like exchanging money for a good or service and like just giving it to someone?
It's funny you bring that up, because the whole time I was so concerned about, oh no, Brewster, don't do that. That's going to break that clause. But they seem to just ignore the rules altogether.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why I think the movie doesn't actually work that well, because he's walking around just going to random people like, oh, can I pay you $20,000 a day to be my personal driver for a week? And I'm like, why don't you just pay him $1 million? Or like, why don't you just pay him whatever 30 million divided by 7 days is? Because he has 7 days. Oh no, 30 days. It's 30 days he has to spend.
30 days,
yeah,
yes.
So why don't you just say to this guy, I'll pay you $1 million a day to be my personal driver? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally.
The rules are really stupid. I think it took me out of it a fair bit.
I can definitely understand that. I guess, like, I got to say, though, like, the absurdity of it, I think, is a great appeal to it. Seeing him eventually having a whole payroll and a whole office of people essentially doing a bullshit job.
Yeah, and he eventually ends up running for mayor as well.
Yes.
Purely because he thinks he can, like, spend all his money on marketing campaigns for becoming the mayor and stuff, and yeah,
that's it. And that was such a funny part. I need to say, like, essentially he spent all this money on a campaign just to say don't vote for anyone, and I'm an idiot, I'm a wasted vote.
Yeah I think, like, I when you told me the premise of this movie, I think in my mind I kind of imagined it as being like a bit more fantastical and a bit more like, now I'm going to spend $1 million on like a pool full of cordial or just random shit. But it's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they really make the most of the what could you buy with all this money? Like sometimes he's like, oh, everyone, let's go for dinner at this fancy restaurant and buy the $4,000 bottle of champagne and buy the most expensive stuff on the menu. And every time I see that, I'm just like, the rules for this are stupid and pointless and it doesn't make sense. And apologies for that criticism.
Jeez, how dare you? Look, going back to the whole 80s aspect of it and being a bit, eerie, I don't know. Maybe it's just like enjoying that kind of the aesthetic of the era.
Yeah.
The aesthetic of the era, the novelty of it. But, I really liked, I don't know, I guess one of my favorite qualities of going back and watching like old films, old media, is that because it looks kind of crap, you can put together in your head how they probably did it, which I could argue, well, it's a really engaging way because that like puts you into that perspective and like you kind of get to do a bit of like puzzle solving with it,
Yeah,
and so as
fair.
I was watching it, you know what I mean? Like thinking of like, how did they shoot this little transition where they're showing, like a digital clock on screen and all that stuff,
Yeah, no, fair enough. I mean, I think that it definitely feels like a film of its era. Like it really
absolutely.
lives in the 80s, and it doesn't feel like it's necessarily trying to do anything substantially more than just being a fun comedy movie. And I'll give it that for sure. Can I ask, do you think is there a modern comedian that you can think of that Richard Pryor, like that you think might have been inspired by Richard Pryor or like reminds you of Richard Pryor in this movie?
Dave Hughes. No one.
Dave Hughes. The whole time I was watching it, I could not help but just like feel like Richard Pryor was so similar to Chris Rock. Like, and
I can say that.
I assume like my assumption is that Chris Rock might have watched a lot of Richard Pryor, and
Yeah, well, that only
maybe
makes
was
sense.
Motivated by him, because it's kind
Yeah.
of like the same way like you literally hear every fucking male radio duo on the radio in Australia, and they're all of them are just trying to sound like Hamish and Andy.
Yeah.
It's sort of like that, but I got so many sort of Chris Rock vibes from Richard Pryor, and I really like Chris Rock. I think he's
Yeah,
great.
same.
What did you? There were a bunch of cameos in this movie as well.
There were, I mean, I guess the most notable one being Rick Moranis, who's always a joy to see on screen.
Yeah.
Who briefly plays this man who can impersonate anyone perfectly, who then for 2 minutes just proceeds to impersonate John Candy and Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a nothing cameo. He's just like, hey, I'm here and I do impressions. Oh, this is what you sound like. Like, imagine if like you get some big comedian today to get that. Like, imagine if fucking, I don't know, like who's a popular comedian, like, I don't know.
Jim Jeffries.
Yeah, Jim Jeffries comes in and is like, I'm bloody you. I'm Chris Hemsworth. Ah.
Yeah. And were there any others?
Not that I can remember, but there was one thing I wanted to bring up. In the middle of nowhere, I'm not sure if you noticed this, at the 55-minute mark, there's a scene where Richard Pryor and John Candy are catching a cab together, and you can see one of the valets for the hotel in the background, and he flips off the camera.
Oh, really?
Yeah, did
I
you
did
not
not
notice
notice that.
Yeah, it really caught me off guard.
But are you sure he's not flipping off the characters?
Well, I don't know.
Like it was meant to happen?
Well, look, it was towards the camera, so look, it could have been either. It could have been either, but it took me out of the movie for a sec.
Are you aware that this movie was a book?
I am,
It was
yes.
a novel from 1902.
1901. Oh, 02.
1902, apparently. And obviously, this actually is not the first film adaptation of Brewster's
No,
Millions.
it's
In fact,
not.
there's been many. And the original book, it was $1 million was left in a will. But he has to spend the $1 million in the first year, or he won't get $7 million more dollars. So the movie has adjusted for inflation in its time, but just want to read out. So 1914, Brewster's Millions. 1921, Brewster's Millions. 1926, Miss Brewster's Millions.
Oh,
So I'm not sure what that is.
change it up. Way ahead of its time.
Another 2 Brewster's Millions in 1935 and 1945. In 1954, there was a Telugu version of this film. Telugu is the language of the Indian states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. That one was called Vadante Dabu. Okay.
Ah, yes.
And there was one in 1961 called Three on a Spree. 1985, Babiyi Abayi, another Indian one, I think. Bruce, this one in 1985. And there was several more Indian adaptations over the time. And then the most recent one from 2018 is Chinese, and it's called Hello, Mr. Billionaire, which I actually quite like as a title.
That's not a bad title. That actually did make me wonder, if this movie was remade today, would you adjust and make it Brewster's Billions?
I think it would have to be Brewster's Billions.
It would have to be. And also, it rolls off the tongue better, you know?
Yeah, this
Or
is
off
actually...
the lips.
This movie is definitely a movie I can see being adapted in, like, the next 10 years. Because,
100%.
like, yeah, Brewster's Billions... It's so true, though, that, like... Back in 1985, having millions of dollars was considered being rich, but now it's like, oh yeah,
It's nothing,
you
yeah.
just be a billionaire, you know. Brewster's Billions would be really, really good. And I'm wondering, who's your dream cast for Brewster's Billions?
Dave Hughes, just Dave Hughes. He's my fan cast for anything. He
living
can be Batman.
He's living the $1 billion lifestyle with all the radio shows he gets paid millions for, and then they end after 2 years.
Speaking of billions, though, Mike, if you don't mind me taking the wheel, the one thought I had towards the end of the movie was, was this ahead of its time and kind of predicted Elon Musk?
How so?
Well, Brewster just goes around just buying up, a bunch of random stuff, and like obviously, Elon Musk, right? Because he owns what, like Tesla, SpaceX, Boring Company, now Twitter.
/X,
You know what I mean? Like, is he obviously he's been around for years, so he hasn't got some 30-day clause. But I don't know, like Bruce's behavior kind of reminded me of like Elon Musk in the last 2 years.
Like how erratic and like random it is. Like,
Yeah.
I'm buying Twitter. Oh, I'm making the competition to NASA.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, Musk his family was really wealthy. I think it's like a myth that he's a self-made billionaire. Like he came from a very wealthy family already, which is kind of different to Brewster, who was like quite a failure, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But
Should have played more minor league baseball.
I know what you mean. There's definitely like the kind, because the movie feels very fast paced. Like it just feels like it's just like going in, and that kind of complements like the fast spending that he has to do. Like he's just going from place to place, spending money, throwing parties and all that stuff. So yeah, I get the comparison you're making between him and Musk, where he's just like snapping up random shit that he wants to buy and then not knowing what to do with it.
Or if you want to put a company into that perspective, maybe like Disney or something.
Disney, I reckon, is a better example of
Disney's
just like we're
Dillions.
just buying everything. But I think like the difference between him and Musk is that Musk actually is a businessman, and like on some level, at least he'd like to think he has an idea of what he wants to do.
That's true. Whereas maybe he's more of like a Clive Palmer.
Yeah. Didn't Clive Palmer lose like $500 million on ad marketing for his campaign or something?
Oh my
God. It was
God.
a significant sum of money.
Oh my God, Bruce's Millions was ahead of its time. It predicted Clive Palmer.
Palmer's Millions.
Palmer's Billions.
I was going to ask more on like delving into like maybe the philosophy of this film, right? So obviously there's a few questions that come to mind, and this is like a similar thing to why I brought up Blank Check and Richie Rich, which are obviously maybe more that fantastical side of it that I was wondering about, because like Richie Rich has a roller coaster in his house and a McDonald's in his house, right?
How is that profitable?
Like
you're not going to go there.
Be profitable because he's rich.
You're not going to go to the McDonald's every day.
True.
Like they just
and there's
open on
only
weekends.
one customer. Like, do you have to pay for the food?
Yeah. Do you have to pay like 50 grand for like fucking Big Mac?
Does he own the store, or does McDonald's go to them and say, "Hey, we'd love to put a store"? like, there's so many questions.
It would be way more smart for them to like pay for a deluxe fucking treatment where like, I don't know, they get a limousine or a private jet to a Macca's to get stuff to and fro.
Yeah, Macca's drive-through.
Exactly. Or like take a private plane, to go to the best McDonald's in fucking Paris or something.
The public can't go to Richie Rich's McDonald's, so it really makes no sense. But you know what I mean? Like with Richie Rich, like it's very on the verge of the absurd. Whereas like in Brewster's Millions, like everything he buys is is feasible for someone to do in the real world. Like,
Yeah.
no one is going to buy their own McDonald's in their house because
No.
it's just stupid. And
also technically an asset to which he's not allowed to own any within the 30 days.
But I think the thing with these movies and the questions that they ask, and I've been doing a lot of thinking recently about like money, how money links to time, because like, you know, you could argue that time and money are interchangeable. You know, you can spend time to save money, or you can spend money to save time. You know, there's all these kinds of things. I think, first of all, the more fun question maybe, what do you reckon, what would you do? What's the first thing if you won the lotto today, what would you do first thing?
Oh, like just me? Like I don't have to think of morals, just like what would I selfishly spend on?
I'd maybe do think of morals because this is people are going to listen to this, and if you say something fucked, you probably don't want them to know. But like, yeah.
Oh, well, for one, I'd probably get like 10 copies of the 2006 Lego Batcave.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's the one like toy I never had as a kid, and I want 10 of them.
Why do you need 10?
One to keep, one to open and build, and then a few others to give away, and then a few to just have as an investment.
Are they really valuable now?
They're like $1,000 each for a sealed set.
Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, that's interesting. I always go to the guy in The Simpsons who, you know, the guy who like truly invented Itchy and Scratchy in that episode.
Oh my God, the solid gold house.
Yeah, he's like, I got everything I ever wanted. A rocket car and a solid gold house. I would buy a solid gold house.
Side note, I know this isn't super relevant,
Yeah.
but that rocket car in The Simpsons Hit and Run, best car in the whole game.
It's in Road Rage as well. Bart drives it. Yeah,
really?
Bart drives it. It's
Not
good.
bad.
But yeah, it is interesting to think like if you didn't have money, if you had in unlimited money, like, because I think I always get sort of like frustrated sometimes when you hear like very wealthy people say like, you know, money really isn't like, you know, isn't everything. Like if I would give all my money away if I could just like be like a kid again, right? But it's like, yeah, but you can't. And like, to be honest, like most ordinary people like you and me, well, you're extraordinary. I'm just ordinary. You're a great guy.
Oh, stop it, you.
But like most ordinary people like you and me, most of our problems, I reckon, could be solved with money.
That's the one theme that kept coming back to my head of like, oh my God, like he's given this life-changing amount of money to which I guess in a good aspect towards Brewster, you know, like he's giving all this like ridiculous money, like, oh, here's 50 grand a day to drive me or whatever. Like to those people, it's life-changing. That's probably going to like fix their medical debt, you know, could help with a house deposit, what have you. You know what I mean? And like, I think the same thing. I'm like, oh my God, if I was just like, hey, can 50 grand to edit some videos? Yeah, sure. No worries. You know, like in the movie, there's a really funny joke where, there's this guy and Brewster says, oh, do you want a drink? And he says, oh no, I don't drink. And then he said, here, do you want to be my interior decorator for 100 grand? Yeah. And he agrees. And then he's like, here, have a drink. And he's like, okay.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's like, yeah, just knowing that, because it's like everyone has a price to do anything.
Yeah.
Right? That's why like whoever the guy is who can fly Katy Perry out to play at his 80th birthday or whatever. The guy who lives in Kew near my parents' house who's a billionaire.
This happened?
Yeah, who's the guy, the billionaire who lives in Kew, who lives around where I grew up, and he flew Katy Perry to Australia for like a few $1 million to perform at his 80th birthday or something, or his kid's birthday, fucking something like that.
The Killionaire.
What?
Q billion.
Q,
don't
yeah.
worry. Don't worry.
You know, there are some people on this planet who have so much money that they could like give you $1 million today and it would
Life-changing.
literally make no difference to them, but it would change your life forever.
Yeah, that's it.
And I think sometimes I really ponder that, and I feel like in a way it's like an injustice that like the world is there's so much like inherent suffering in the world, but then there's some people who have the means to change it, but like won't. But then I'm like, but I guess it's not really their responsibility to do that, and they've gotten their lucky break and they have all this money, but it's like, and then I'm like, well, if I had heaps of money, I wouldn't be going around to everyone and giving them $5,000. But
yeah,
it's just like, I just think that's one of the biggest kind of like thought problems for me is like, where is the justice in the way our society is set up like that?
Well, that is true, but I guess to challenge that, by the end of the movie, Brewster says he's sick of money. Like obviously you can see that he's mentally burnt out. He's sick of, like spending all this money because like he goes into it thinking, oh my God, I can do this in 30 days. But then like, sees that like that's not all that's correct. Money isn't all that's cracked up to be. And it's not what, the single core defining thing, and I think we definitely see, a change in Brewster's tune by the end of the movie.
I think like I know what you're saying, but I disagree with you, which is fine. But I think like I think that thing of like, oh, I'm so sick of money, I don't even want to. I think that's a lie that rich people make up to try and humble themselves and make them more relatable. Because like even like things like health and mental health, like you could say like, oh, money can't make you happy, but it's like, yeah, but the more money you have, like the more you can do for your mental health. Like if you don't have to work and you can stay at home all day and chill and watch TV and, do all this stuff.
Pretty good life.
That's a good life.
Yeah.
Whereas some people will never have that life and are going to be like literally just working until retirement if they don't die on the way there. And it's like when these rich people go, oh, money doesn't mean anything, I don't care. It's like, all right, then give it all away and go sleep on the couch at your friend's place. Like I really believe that if you could give these billionaires like all this money, if you could say to these billionaires, I have a time machine and I can bring you back to age 12, right? You just have to pay me all your money now. I reckon most of them be like, nah. And I just think it's all just bullshit that they make up to sell a lie to us plebs so we stay in line and never challenge them. Anyway, that's my cynical view of billionaires and millionaires.
Mike, what do you think the listener's thinking now? The listener probably went in thinking, oh, this is going to be funny. I'm going to listen to this two schmo blokes talk about some random 80s movie. And then then Mike ends up talking about this existential...
of capitalism and wealth.
Exactly. Like, is this your fucking communist arc or something?
But do you disagree with me, though, like on that? Like, I think that there is a lot of... I think that when I watch movies personally, because we're both not cinephiles or film buffs, but when I watch a movie, I'm always like asking myself questions like this about like, what is the messaging behind this movie? And some movies just don't have any messaging, or it's just really stupid messaging. But I think there's actually a lot to kind of glean and gain and a lot of thought-provoking stuff through movies like this, because money is something we all accept that money is a thing in our society. We all have to earn it. Like, oh, well, you don't have to earn it, but like you need it. Somehow you need to get money. And I just think it's weird that like some people can just like generate my dad always says, you know what? There's some people in this country making shitloads of money and it's not me. And I'm like, yeah. So like
another Tony classic.
Yeah, that's a classic. But yeah, I just think, even though this is a comedy movie, I think these questions came to me while I was watching it, which is kind of why I wanted to pose them to you.
So what you're saying is this movie made you sad for not having
this
300 million?
Yeah, because mate, I'll tell you what, Brewster, if you give me $30 million to spend in 30 days, I'll have no problems. I'll figure it out.
You
mate.
reckon?
Yeah, I reckon it'd be easy.
Is that a challenge you could give yourself? Like, obviously, you don't have 30 million to spend, but like, it's like those websites. It's like try and spend like Bill Gates' money. It's got a whole list. Like, you can buy you can buy all these private jets. You can buy all these football teams. You can buy these stadiums, and you've got so much movie left over. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but there is always going to be someone to take your money. Someone will always want your money. You could buy all the houses. Imagine having the Monopoly board of the real life Monopoly board. I've got the whole board. That's basically being a billionaire is owning the whole board in Monopoly. I'm sorry. You've landed on my space and you've got to pay me.
Which is funny because wasn't Monopoly invented to warn about the dangers of capitalism?
Was it really?
I believe it is. And now we got the Elon Musks walking around who have proven it.
Well, what do you think of capitalism as a system?
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah,
it gets me on the bus, Like,
I just think, yeah. Did you say gets me on the bus?
Yeah.
All right. Well, you've already alluded. You've already alluded to your kind of ranking for this one. You reckon this one's pretty high?
I do, and I gotta say, as soon as I heard that this was not a favorably received movie, I was quite shocked.
I wasn't.
Well, I can see that. Look, is this a bit of jealousy? Is it a bit of, like a reality check for you? What do you think this is?
Yeah, I mean, definitely like just reminded me of the frustration I have living my day-to-day life where I have to earn money by doing stuff and trade my time for money. But yes.
So I suppose if you want to see a movie, you don't want to go into it being reminded of the struggles of life, and this movie reminded you of that.
Yeah, somehow this light-hearted Richard Pryor comedy film reminded me of the struggles of life. And hey, that's fair.
And that's Bloody Movie Club.
Hey, that was awesome, by the way. Thanks for chatting. Next month.
Oh, we got to reveal, folks.
We are going to be watching the 2009 horror film directed by Sam Raimi. Do you know what it is?
Tell the audience.
But do you know?
No.
I was hoping you'd be like, yeah, but tell the audience. Drag Me to Hell.
Ooh.
Have you heard of it?
No.
Okay. Sam Raimi film. And obviously, he's well known for
Evil Dead, Spider-Man, Oz the Great and Powerful from 2013.
Did he do Oz the Great and Powerful? That
He
movie
did.
sucks.
With
I'm glad
Mila
we're not-
Kunis
Yeah,
as
and
the
she's
Wicked
so
Witch.
bad. So bad. Never has there been a worse casting for the Wicked Witch of the West than fucking Mila Kunis.
And James Franco as the wizard.
Yes. Terrible film. Terrible.
Doesn't that movie start off-
Somehow looks worse than the original Wizard of Oz, even though it came out 50 years later.
And it was a Disney movie. Doesn't that movie start out with him doing a magic trick and there's some girl in a wheelchair and it's like, oh, can you make me walk again?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Classic. All right, Drag Me to Hell next month. Pat, thank you so much for being here. Loving this. Oh, I should address, there hasn't been any TCB episodes for the last couple of weeks. That's just been in some crazy places, but hopefully we'll be back soon. So, yeah.
And cut.
Cut.
And that's a wrap.
And that's a wrap.
See you at award season.